It's fairly common knowledge at this point in time that an MBA is generally a worthwhile degree to pursue. It gives you a well-rounded knowledge of business concepts and how companies apply them. But even within that degree, there are many MBA programs out there that offer specializations or concentrations. And with these, you take some additional coursework in a particular subject. And in this video, we're going to talk about the MBA in Finance specialization, who it's for, what you can expect in terms of content, and is it worth it? So let's talk about that right now. So for starters, who is this for? Now, the reason you'd want to pursue an MBA with a specialization in finance obviously is that you have some kind of interest in a career or some job function in finance. Or maybe you at least think that you're interested. Now, finance can lead you down many different career paths. But just to ground us on what finance is, I'm going to take a definition straight from one of my favorite online resources, Investopedia. We'll see what they say. Finance is a term for matters regarding the management, creation, and study of money and investments. Typically, when we think in those terms, it's generally forward-looking. How do we make the best business decisions today such that we can create the most value in the future? When you do this, you're projecting different financial scenarios for decisions that you or a company makes. In terms of career pathing, this can relate to a lot of different roles. Corporate strategy or consulting tends to bubble up to the top of this list. Those are likely going to be the most common. Generally, in those roles, you're weighing one investment option versus other investment options for a given situation. For example, in corporate strategy, or if you're a consultant, you're working with a company that's looking to expand their sales force. If we expand the sales force by 30%, we may end up seeing a 4% return on investment each year. Now, whether that's good or bad really depends on what other investment options there are out there. Now, someone with a background in finance or has a little bit more knowledge in the subject might think, well, what's the interest rate environment that we're in today? Would we be better off just putting that money in a savings account or maybe some low to medium risk investment? If it's possible to make a better return in those vehicles, then maybe that scaling your sales force by 30% may not be a good idea. But again, as someone that studies finance or has maybe specialized in finance during an MBA program, you would think in those terms. But going back to career for a moment, I mentioned corporate strategy and consulting. There are companies that specialize in both. You may also look into banking or credit card companies, as well as companies that may sell product on credit, either through their own credit service or through a third-party credit service. So plenty of opportunities here, and I'll touch on a few more here in just a little bit. But really, when you specialize in finance, you are signaling to employers that you have this ability, whether you go into a finance-specific role or not, although this is what you likely want to do, but you signal to employers that you have the ability to look at different pathways and understand the return on investment, the risks that are associated with different pathways, and trying to make, using some form of analysis, what is the best decision we can make today? And that's going to be useful in a lot of different roles. And if that seems like something you would enjoy learning about or learning how to do, and you would enjoy a career in doing so, then this specialization might be for you. Now, what content will you see? Now, you might see some variations amongst MBA programs when they offer a finance specialization, but generally what you'll find are corporate finance related curriculum. Just to give you some examples, I've pulled up two different universities and their MBA specialization curriculum. One is LSU, and in this case, they offer a handful of different courses: contemporary investments, contemporary issues in finance, financial markets and institutions, and financial analytics. And these courses seem a little bit broad, but there's a lot of information you really can pack into these courses. But again, this is just to give you a general overview of finance. Now, one thing I will mention as I'm going through these courses is that although these are specializations in finance, you're still not going to go all too deep in finance. If you really wanted to go deeper down that path, you may explore a master's in finance directly as opposed to an MBA, or you may consider pursuing your CFA certification. And if you want to check that out, I've got a link in the description below of some preparation material. And you can also learn a little bit more about the CFA and that being a potential option if you want to go into finance. But with that said, every MBA program is a little bit different. There are some really interesting courses out there. The other ones I'm going to feature here are from UNC. Now, looking at UNC, which is actually ranked as a top online MBA program, and the full-time program for that matter is also incredibly highly ranked. You can see the electives that are offered here to get an idea of not only the content you may find, but also gives you an idea of the types of roles that might be available after graduation related to those topics. So there's a good amount of variety here depending on what it is that interests you the most and where you might want to take your career, so that when you get to a potential interview with a prospective employer, you can say that you have your MBA with a specialization in finance and you have familiarity with some of these specific topics. And if that role is related to those topics, then you have an advantage. Now, thinking more broadly outside of corporate strategy and consulting, there's other companies and other industries. When you think of everything that's listed here in terms of content and curriculum, you may also think of banking, just general, maybe investment banking, or maybe not specifically investment banking, but other banking, as well as credit card companies. So when you look at these courses, you also want to think about the different divisions that exist within companies in banking, in consulting, or in any major corporation. There's a lot of these subjects or a lot of this material that's going to be applicable to certain parts of those organizations. You may also want to consider working a little bit backwards. You may want to go on LinkedIn or Indeed and look at some of the finance related roles and try to identify if any keyword or any particular skill or subject matter expertise is listed as a requirement. See if there's anything that pops up most often, and see if any of those match up to some of the coursework that you see that I mentioned just a moment ago. And provided it sounds like something you may enjoy, then this may help inform your decision making when it comes to exploring MBA programs with finance specializations. And then of course, when it comes to actually selecting the specific courses in the program. Now, is it worth it? The worth of a degree, I tend to think of it more in terms of value. This is a function usually of money and time invested versus the expected return, usually in the form of income and or job satisfaction. Coincidentally, this is very much a finance exercise. Whether it's worth it to you really depends on whether you think you'll enjoy finance in terms of learning the material and also going into a career that's finance related. And if you have any doubts as to your interest level in finance, one thing I'd recommend is you can go to a website like Coursera. I've got a link down in the description below you can go and check out. But go to Coursera and explore some of the courses in finance, some of the more popular ones, which again I'll list down there, and take those courses. You can actually check to see if you enjoy the subject matter, but really the whole purpose is to understand whether you like it or not before you even think about committing to any MBA program. Now, the real question is, financially, is it worth it? Now, this depends on the school as well as your career goals. The answer is usually yes. Any role in finance tends to be very well paying, and they can be quite lucrative depending on the role and the company. Now, the income you earn after graduation depends a little bit on the school, but also, I would say more importantly, your ability to network and connect with the right people in the industry in which you are interested. Now, I would say on average, MBAs tend to command pretty solid salaries. Now, we're looking anywhere from 70, 80K on up. I would say the six-figure mark maybe is a little bit above average when you consider all of the MBA programs out there. So knowing that, there's also some programs out there when you think of top-ranked MBAs, the average salary after graduation is quite a bit higher. But nonetheless, there's some statistics that you can look into on that. I may have some more information down in the description below. But when you think about the money that you're investing into an MBA program, there are some programs that are anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 for the entire program, and then some that are around the $100,000 mark, and there's some that are even more expensive than that. But really, I'm looking at the ones that have finance specializations as an option. Now, generally speaking, the higher the price of an MBA program, the higher ranked it is. And usually with a higher ranking comes more of a reputation, more visibility as a brand, and they tend to attract a lot of employers. So you will end up seeing, on average, better opportunities, and the opportunities themselves will come a little bit easier because, again, you have those companies coming out to that school to recruit. But this is not always the case. It is by no means a guarantee that you'll land some phenomenal opportunity after graduating. Even if you go to this well-ranked school, there's no guarantee that you're going to command the salary that, at least on paper and according to the statistics, say that you might be expecting. Depending on your financial situation, some of those top-ranked programs might not be affordable, they might not be reasonable. But even then, you'll be very well served in any established accredited university MBA program. So long as you do well in class, you do well in your group projects, you build those connections, and you network like crazy, you will find success. But as far as programs go, one good place to start is by checking out my video on top affordable online MBAs, many of which offer various specializations even outside of finance. So you have some options to explore. And if after watching this video you decide that maybe finance isn't the right path for you or isn't the right specialization, but perhaps you still want to do an MBA, you want to check out my other video where I talk about the top 5 MBA specializations.